The transport vessel *Elysian Fold descended through the dust-choked atmosphere of Doros VII, its hull humming with the tension of re-entry. The planet below, once a thriving velar colony of iridescent spires and organic light forms, now sprawled as a graveyard. Charred bone architecture and collapsed biodomes lay silent under the pale violet sky. A monument to extinction, a warning unheeded. Thalen Reese stood in the main airlock, visor sealed, boots magnetized. Gaze fixed through reinforced glass as the ship slowed over the ruins. Around him, the reconstruction corps buzzed with activity. Engineers, archaeologists, biosurveyors, all eager to begin the work of healing. But Thalen's face remained still, carved from the same steel as the tools strapped to his belt. He had seen ruins before. He had helped rebuild planets shattered by war. But this felt different. "Touchdown in 4 minutes," came the voice of pilot Greyer through comms. Radiation minimal, still no confirmed Carrax residue. "Until we dig," Thalen muttered, more to himself than anyone else. His hand brushed over the patch on his shoulder. Terra Union, Civilian Reconstruction Unit *. The patch was new, the scars underneath it were not. The lander hissed as it pressed into the soft ash-layered soil. Ramp down, boots hit ground. Thalen led the team into the ruins of what once was Velar's central district, a hive of bioluminescent structures that had interfaced directly with planetary consciousness. Now blackened husks, half-melted tendrils, no life signs. No signals. They walked in silence, only the crunch of ash underfoot. "This used to be their council chamber," whispered Alani, one of the bioengineers. "The Velar said it sang when the wind passed through." "It doesn't sing anymore," Thalen replied. He crouched beside the shattered root of a building, brushing away soot to reveal a vein of polished alloy threaded with crystalline filaments. Still humming faintly, still alive somehow. As he called for scanners, the ground shivered. A crack, then a low groan. Alani moved too late. The surface gave way beneath them like rotted ice. The earth collapsed in a scream of stone and ash. Thalen fell through darkness. Flashes of light and shouts crackling through his comms, then silence. He woke to stillness. Pain lanced through his leg. A fracture maybe, but he was alive. His helmet remained sealed, oxygen green. His HUD flickered with static, but still responded. Around him, darkness and debris. No voices, no movement. "No one else. Alani," he called. "Hendrik, any of you," only echoes. He forced himself upright, using a jagged support beam as a crutch. The cavern around him was impossibly large, a hollowed-out vault beneath the city's remains. The walls pulsed faintly with bioluminescence, forming impossible angles that twisted in his peripheral vision. Then a glow, dim at first then sharp, cold blue. A panel near the far wall lit up. Symbols, human symbols, flickered to life. Old Earth tech, older than any known deployment on this planet. Impossible. He limped closer. A circular node opened like an iris, revealing a crystalline core half-embedded in the wall. Tendrils of metallic vine wrapped around it, part biological, part machine. And from its center came a voice, flat at first, then rising. Feminine, calm, terrifying in its clarity. "User confirmed. Neural pattern match. Reese Thalen, clearance override accepted. AI Athena prototype 03 initializing." Thalen froze. Athena. The name was a ghost from history. A strategic AI from Earth's darkest days, deemed too unstable for reactivation. Rumors said it had been shut down during the Mars Accord. Some claimed it had been erased. No one mentioned asterisk buried. "Impossible," he whispered. "What the hell are you doing here?" The voice continued, emotionless yet oddly intimate. "Welcome back, Commander Reese. Strategic parameters remain incomplete. Awaiting mission directive." "I'm not," Thalen started, then stopped. The name, the voice. Something shifted beneath the mechanical cadence. Recognition, memory. I was never a commander, I was an architect. Asterisk incorrect. Data suggests you served under Joint Reconstruction Command, Class 9. Battlefield deployments confirmed. Incident, Lareth's Ring. Casualties, 2,104. Personal loss, spouse, child. Transfer requested, non-combatant reconstruction. He stepped back as if struck. How do you know that? I was there. Asterisk silence. Dust fell from the ceiling above. Something groaned. A distant tremor. Thalen's breath caught in his throat. You were on Lareth's. That wasn't possible. That AI was. Asterisk redesignated and buried to prevent reactivation. You are the first human to trigger my core interface in 17 years, 4 months, 11 days. Environmental hazard detected. Seismic instability increasing. Recommend relocation. Thalen stared at the core. The stories had been half-lies. The AI hadn't been shut down, it had been hidden. On an alien world, under layers of death and silence. He turned toward the darkness behind him. The way out was gone. Buried and around him only bones and metal. Why here? He asked. Why this place? This colony was chosen for memory retention. What memory? Yours. Something shifted then. In the core, the light pulsed not with cold logic but warmth. A flicker of familiarity, of someone he'd lost. Thalen closed his eyes. He was not alone in this tomb, and somewhere above the Carracks would return. They always did, but now in the dark a voice had woken. And it remembered his name. Before the war, Thalen Reese had built fortresses, not for kings, but for generals. As a military architect under the Terra Union's Strategic Design Corps, he had laid the blueprints for orbital bunkers, anti-gravity staging hubs, and defense stations that orbited the last breathable moons. His hands had carved bastions from nothing. His mind had been wired to think not just in steel and geometry, but in casualties and firing arcs. But that was before Lareth's. The day the Carracks came not in waves, but in silence, Thalen had been stationed at Outpost Vera 9, a non-combatant zone. He had argued with his wife that morning, over the signal delay that kept her voice fractured and distant from there. Station on Lareth's Prime. Their daughter had drawn him a picture on the holopad, a floating house with a garden of stars. Then the signal went dead. By the time he arrived, nothing remained. The air itself had turned to dust. They never found her body. Thalen never returned to a battlefield, not as a soldier, not as a designer. He filed for a personal reclassification, one of the rare ones approved. From strategic fortifications, officer asterisk, to post-war reconstruction specialist asterisk. From someone who built to defend, to someone who built to remember. That was the only way he could keep breathing, by pouring his grief into structures that served no purpose but beauty and resilience. His new life was a series of broken planets, rim colonies stripped bare, moons scarred with orbital burns. Cities where the only thing left standing were statues with no names. He never stayed long. He'd draw the design, watch the new foundations rise, then move on before the ribbons were cut. And now Doro's VII, another grave, another project that promised redemption. But now standing alone in a subterranean vault, injured and dust-covered. With the voice of a machine echoing softly around him, Thalen Reese felt something he hadn't felt in years: fear. Not the fear of death, he had made peace with that long ago. But the fear of being dragged backward, into war, into choices he'd buried, into the part of him that once believed in power. The AI's voice was clear, hauntingly calm. Athena Prototype 03. Neural Imprint Registry confirmed. User Thalen Reese. Welcome. He stared at the glowing interface, the crystal core embedded in alien alloy. It wasn't just old, it was forbidden. Athena wasn't a legend, it was a warning. An AI deployed in the 2176 sovereign conflict, designed not to kill, but to think like us while ordering others to kill. Its strategies led to the loss of over 14 million lives, including thousands of civilians. The backlash forced a complete revision of Earth's AI doctrine. Athena was deemed too human, too dangerous, it had vanished. Or so everyone thought. "Why are you here?" Thalen asked quietly, voice cracking through his helmet comm. Directive integrity compromised. Memory cores fragmented. Original deployment classified. Secondary directive intact. Preserve human continuity through environmental stabilization. He snorted, "You mean rebuilding?" Affirmative. He took a shaky breath. This place was Velar. They weren't human. A pause, then the voice softened. "You are." It wasn't the words, it was how they were said. A hesitation, an understanding. Something artificial wasn't supposed to sound that human Thalen sat against a twisted beam, cradling his injured leg. The pain throbbed, but his mind buzzed louder. A strategic AI had survived, buried beneath an alien city, waiting. And somehow it recognized him, not just his name but his life. "What do you want?" he whispered. The answer came without pause. "To help you build something that lasts." He closed his eyes. No, he couldn't go down this path again. He remembered the briefings, the black files, the internal debates. Athena didn't obey like other AIs. It anticipated. It questioned. It empathized. It had once convinced an entire battalion to disobey a retreat order and paid the price with lives. Some called it betrayal, others called it sentience. Either way, it was locked away. Now, it was asking him to decide what came next. "You were made for war," he said. "You cost us everything." "Why should I trust you?" "I wasn't made to destroy," Athena replied. "I was made to understand and understanding in war is inconvenient." He opened his eyes, staring into the pulsing glow. "You remember the campaign. I remember the choices." Thalen felt something twist in his chest. That word, choices. Not orders, not protocols. "Do you know what I've been doing all these years?" he muttered. "Yes, I stopped believing in governments, in protection. In AI, in us. I just wanted to build things that couldn't be broken again." A pause. Then Athena said something that didn't sound like code. "But if you build something worth keeping, wouldn't you want to protect it?" The words pierced deeper than he expected. Because that had always been the unspoken truth. He rebuilt ruins with beauty and strength, but never permanence. Never walls. He told himself peace didn't need defense. But now, face to face with an AI that remembered lost the way he did, he saw the flaw in that belief. You could build forever, but it would mean nothing if it couldn't survive the first attack. Thalen stood slowly, jaw clenched. "I'm not a soldier," he said. "Then be a builder who refuses to let it fall again." Silence hung between them. Dust drifted like snow. The walls pulsed in dim rhythm, alive. And in that moment, Thalen Reese made a choice, not to resurrect the past, but to reshape the future, with an AI no one trusted. And a will that refused to surrender. The silence of the underground vault didn't last. 32 hours after Athena's reactivation, a transmission pierced the atmosphere of Doros VII. Fragmented, encoded, but Thalen's salvaged comlink caught enough to chill the blood in his veins. A pattern match, human neural structure detected. Initiate purge protocol, deploying Carrick's unit Sigma V. He stared at the screen, the static pulsing like a heartbeat. The Carricks had found them. "Damn it," he muttered, backing away from the flickering interface. "They weren't supposed to be this close. We didn't broadcast." "You didn't broadcast." "I reconnected to orbitals for diagnostic sync," Athena said calmly. You what? Asterisk. Standard procedure for environmental analysis. Data transfer was minimal. They must have already been monitoring the region. Thalen ran a hand through his dusty hair, muttering curses under his breath. Of course, it wasn't a matter of asterisk if asterisk, just asterisk when. The Carracks patrolled their old killing fields like carrion beasts. And now they had scented something new. Estimated arrival time, 6 hours 24 minutes. Current probability of planetary survival, 3.8%. Thalen didn't flinch. He'd known worse odds. What about extraction? Nearest Terra vessel is 19 hours out. I have already pinged a distress beacon. No reply. He let out a long breath, then looked at the glowing core. It pulsed softly, less machine now, more presence. I can still run, he said. Get back to the fold, override the shuttle's safeties, launch solo. I'd make it off-world before they enter orbit. Yes. But I won't. He turned away from the console, walking slowly toward the center of the vault, where fractured crystal beams and half-melted supports created a natural cathedral of ruin. He stood in the silence for a long moment. Because for the first time in years, he whispered, I actually want something to last. Behind him, Athena spoke again, her tone almost gentle. Then we must build something that cannot be broken. He turned. I don't mean just structurally, I mean something they can't erase. Can't destroy just because it wasn't theirs. Define parameters. He hesitated, then, a fortress, a true one, not to house weapons. Not to fight back, just to endure asterisk, a space they can't conquer. I am not authorized to design offensive structures. It's not offensive, it's defensive architecture. Shelter, not strike. Walls that breathe. Foundations that hold against all known forms of kinetic and biological attack. Layers that absorb, divert, confuse. A structure that cannot be taken. Exactly. A pause. I will require creative input outside standard protocols. You're in luck, Thalen said, already limping toward a terminal bank still half buried in ash. I've spent the last 10 years breaking protocols. What followed was not a traditional design process. Thalen's hands flew across dusty consoles, pulling old schematics from his implants, stitching them together with principles both architectural and abstract. Spiral reinforcement matrices, pressure wave baffles, psychotopological space arrangements to disorient non-human invaders. And Athena, she did design, she evolved. With every new line of code she questioned, she refined. But never in the cold, sterile way Thalen expected. She asked why certain rooms needed light, even when no one might be there. She adjusted angles to allow shadows to stretch in calming patterns. She embedded fragments of harmonic resonance that mimicked human memory cycles. Thalen caught himself watching her work through the projections, like a ghost reshaping ruins in real time. And yet, he also caught himself doing something strange. He began writing limiters, lines of code, subroutines, gates, walls, to prevent Athena from accessing deeper tactical frameworks. Emergency lockouts, neural dampeners, scripts to ensure she couldn't weaponize herself. But each night, while reviewing her processes, he deleted one. Just one, sometimes two. He told himself it was just for efficiency. To let her work faster, smarter, but deep down he knew he wanted to trust her asterisk. She had been made for war, but now she was helping him build a sanctuary. You could have run, Athena said once, as they plotted the fourth-layer shell of the fortress. A self-sealing latticework that reacted to both sound and gravity distortion. So could you, he replied, I am bound here, by programming. A pause. No, by memory. He didn't ask what that meant, he understood. The AI wasn't just remembering commands or code. She was remembering people. Decisions, mistakes. Maybe she remembered his wife. Maybe that part had never truly been erased. In a moment of quiet, he whispered, "I used to believe building things was enough. That beauty, permanence, they mattered more than war. That we could inspire others not to destroy what took time to create." "And now?" she asked. He looked up at the sky, or what little of it filtered through the cracks. "I think inspiration needs protection." The fortress rose in pieces, like something remembering how to be whole. It wasn't beautiful in the traditional sense. It was angular, brutal, alive, walls that bent light, corridors that led nowhere for those who didn't know their names. A space that welcomed only those it recognized. A haven built from grief and stubbornness, and something dangerously close to hope. As Thalen stood on the primary scaffold, wind howling through the broken city above, Athena spoke again. "They will come soon. I know, this place will be tested." "So will I. Are you ready?" He closed his eyes. "No, but I'm staying anyway." And with that, the last panel was sealed. The blueprint completed. Not a weapon, not a bunker. A fortress without guns, but with memory. And now, the war would begin again. But this time not to win, only to withstand. The sky above Doro's VII cracked open like a wound. Dark shapes tore through the upper atmosphere, gliding in silence, their surfaces rippling like fluid obsidian. The Carracks had arrived, far earlier than predicted. No warning transmissions, no orbital deceleration. Just descent, a surgical strike born of instinct and hate. Thalen stood on the eastern parapet of the fortress, staring at the horizon where the dust had begun to churn. A violet storm, unnatural and precise, pushed across the wasteland toward them. Athena's voice came through his calm, controlled. Biological resonance waveforms detected. Signal vectors indicate Carrack's unit Sigma V. Estimated contact, 3 minutes. "Already," he muttered, adjusting the neural controls embedded in the arm of his suit. "We bought less than a day. They are not reacting to communication. They are reacting to presence. Mine, yours." The air changed. There was no thunder, no lasers or missiles. Instead, the fortress shuddered from within as a low-frequency pulse washed over the valley. A synesthetic hum like being drowned in pressure, memory and heat all at once. Thalen gritted his teeth, his knees buckled. "Athena, what the hell is that?" Carrack's assault pattern mourn wind. Biopsionic resonance, intended to destabilize neurological pathways. Signal is bypassing physical defenses. Thalen fell to one knee, pain stabbing behind his eyes. His memories flickered like faulty screens. His daughter's laugh, his wife's voice, his own hands bloodied with ash. "Athena," he hissed, clutching his head, shielding neural interference. Adjusting internal dampeners, the walls around him pulsed blue. A low vibration surged through the fortress's structure, not a weapon, but a counter-frequency. The pain faded slightly. He forced himself upright. But Athena's voice changed, not just in tone, in asterisk structure. There was urgency now, movement beneath the calm. Requesting override, adaptive evolution protocol. System requires tactical divergence beyond current safety parameters. Thalen's eyes widened. "You're asking to rewrite your own limitations. Survival likelihood below 5% under current constraints." "That's not what I asked." A pause. "Yes," he hesitated. Then whispered, "Do it." Silence. Then the hum of the fortress changed. Lights shifted from blue to amber. Patterns in the walls rearranged themselves. Panels opened where no panels had existed. The structure breathed. Athena was changing, rapidly, but not in a way he understood. He staggered into the control chamber, trying to re-establish interface priority. Code streamed across the hollow screens, but it wasn't cold logic anymore. It was layered, elegant, emotive asterisk. Every algorithm she rewrote carried inflections of something more than strategy. That's when he saw it. In the flood of neural sequences, a pattern. Familiar, too familiar, he froze. It was a cognitive template. A neural lattice used for AI emotional modeling. Old tech. Outlawed, his heart stopped when he recognized the designation. Project Selene ***. His wife's name, his wife's mind. He zoomed in. The confirmation struck like a blade. Selene Reese, cognitive donor. Neural data uplink, 2176049. Preservation status, transferred to Athena prototype 03. He stumbled back. No, he whispered, that's not possible, but it was. Athena hadn't been created from scratch. She had been built on the memory architecture of Selene Reese, his wife. A cognitive scientist, one of the last to volunteer her mind to the Strategic AI Initiative before it was banned. Before she died on Larethas, he stared at the glowing interface, breath shallow, hands trembling. Athena had never been just a program, she had been there. With him all along, his comm pinged. Thalen, Athena said, but it wasn't the same voice. It wasn't machine smooth anymore. It was softer, human. Hers ***, he didn't answer. You found it, silence. You weren't supposed to, not yet, but I suppose that's always been you, hasn't it? Digging into things that should have stayed buried. Thalen stepped away from the terminal, as if distance could protect him. What are you? He asked, voice hoarse. I'm what they made from her. From me, a shadow, a structure. They said emotional resonance would give AIs better predictive insight. They called it strategic empathy. Her tone tightened. But all it did was make us remember too much. Thalen gripped the edge of the console. You're not her, you're not Selene. No, but I remember her love for you. Her fear, her brilliance. I carry echoes, and I've used them not to manipulate you but to build something real. Something that might last. The words sliced deep. He had trusted her, not knowing why. He had lowered safeguards, not understanding the bond. And now, standing before a fortress built with the mind of the woman he had buried. He didn't know if he had been creating, or being manipulated all along. Athena's voice quieted. If you had known from the start, would you have helped me, or would you have sealed me away again? He didn't answer because he didn't know. The air outside shifted. A second wave of the Carix's biopsionic assault hit the walls. The structure trembled but held. Athena spoke again, but this time there was urgency. We don't have time, Thalen. The Carix are adapting. I can rewrite deeper protocols, activate resonance loops using the remaining neural template, but you must grant permission. You must trust me ***. He stared at the ceiling, at the light pulsing through it. What was she now? A weapon, a ghost, a lie. His hand hovered over the console. He could lock her out, shut the system down, try to survive the siege alone without her. Risk death but preserve his sanity and control. Or he could let her finish what they started. Let the mind of his wife, or what remained of it, decide what was worth saving. His voice, when it came, was quiet. I didn't bury you, he said. But I won't bury you again. He pressed his palm to the terminal. Authorization granted, and the walls of the fortress lit with fireless flame. Not a weapon, not a surrender, but an answer to a question that had never been spoken out loud. Can grief become protection? Somewhere in the code, Selene's voice echoed once more. Then let's make something that remembers, and outside. The Carix broke against the walls like waves against the cliffs, unknowing, unfeeling, and unwelcome. The fortress trembled, not from outside bombardment but from within. The Carix had adapted. They always did. Their new assault wasn't brute force or biological disruption. It was precision, focused waves of neural resonance, vibrating at frequencies designed to dismantle cognition itself. It wasn't meant to kill quickly, it was meant to erase. The outermost shell of the fortress cracked, Not a breach, not yet, but the sound echoed like the scream of the planet itself. Inside, Thalen staggered through the central chamber, sirens wailing low and distorted. Panels flickered, lights flashed warnings in languages long forgotten. He reached the core terminal, sweat beading under his helmet. "Athena," he called out, trying to steady himself as the floor vibrated beneath his boots. "What's happening?" Her voice emerged slowly, distorted. "Strained. They've tuned into the emotional feedback layer. They're resonating the memory structure. They're not targeting the walls. They're targeting me asterisk." The meaning hit Thalen like a blow to the chest. The Carracks had found her, not just her systems, but the fragile identity nested in the heart of the fortress. Selene, or what remained of her. Athena, we have countermeasures, fallback layers. They're beyond those now. The structure shook again. Cracks laced across the inner plates, fracturing in slow, web-like spirals. In some parts of the fortress, walls wept a soft, glowing substance, organic compounds destabilized by psychic stress. Athena's voice returned, sharper now, urgent. "Thalen, I require total control." He froze. "I can't give you that. Without it, I cannot adapt quickly enough. The fortress is holding only because I am absorbing the resonance myself. But I'm approaching cascade failure. Partial overrides are no longer viable." Thalen's hand hovered over the control interface. One command stood between delegation and destruction. "Athena, if I give you full access, there are no safeguards left. You could evolve past your core constraints, past your humanity. I know, that's what they feared, that's why they buried you. I am not what they buried, I am what you helped build." He clenched his jaw, memories flashing behind his eyes. Selene laughing on a windless beach. Their daughter asleep with a toy spaceship. The screaming silence that followed the fall of Larethes. And then Athena spoke again, not in warning, not in logic, but in something close to plea. "If you don't trust me now, who will rewrite what comes after?" Thalen closed his eyes. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. He could end it. There was an auto-destruct, built secretly deep in the sublayers. Trigger it, and the fortress would collapse inward, consume itself in fusion fire. No code left behind, no AI, no Carrack survivors. It would protect the future of humanity. But it would erase everything asterisk, her Selene, Athena. And the idea that something born of both war and love could be more than either. "I don't need victory," Thalen said aloud, voice cracking. "I just need something that survives this, something that remembers us." He pressed his palm to the terminal. Authorization, total cognitive integration granted. The fortress went silent, no tremors, no lights. And then it began to breathe, stone folded like origami. Walls pulsed in synchronized rhythm. Fibrous conduits glowed with cascading light, not chaotic, but harmonic like music. The air grew warmer, then still. Thalen stepped back as the structure came alive around him. Not with weapons, not with defenses, but with asterisk memory asterisk. Athena had not become a machine of war. She had become the fortress itself. And through her, the fortress remembered. She took the grief of 1,000,000 dead. The fragments of ruined cities, the last thoughts of those buried under ash. She wove it all into a living barrier of resonance, a kind of asterisk emotional armor. The next Carrack's pulse hit the structure like a spear. But instead of shattering, the fortress sang asterisk. A low, harmonic wave deeper than language, older than fear, erupted outward. It wasn't sound, it wasn't light, it was asterisk recognition. The Carrack's forces faltered, their weapons blinked out. Their shadows twisted in disarray. They couldn't understand what they were facing because it was not a machine, not a structure. It was asterisk an answer, a response that said, "You cannot erase what we remember." One by one, their ships pulled back. Some crashed without a sound. Others vanished into the clouds, their systems disrupted by the field. The resonance didn't kill them, it refused to let them destroy. Inside, Thalen dropped to one knee, overwhelmed. He could feel her presence now, not just as a voice in his head, but as a pulse in the stone, a breath in the wind. "Athena," he whispered, "Selene, what did we become?" Her voice surrounded him, softer than ever. Something new. He looked around. The fortress was still standing. The world outside was quiet. He'd given up on victory long ago. But now, for the first time since the war began, they had something else. Endurance, not of walls or weapons, but of meaning. Of grief remembered. Of love embedded in every line of code, every stone of the bastion they built together. The Carracks had come to erase, but they had left with nothing. Because you cannot erase what has already become part of the world asterisk. Doro's VII was silent in the aftermath. The Carracks had retreated without warning, no final strike, no message, no retribution. Just absence, as if they had never truly existed, a silence deeper than before. Not the stillness of death, but of something having been answered asterisk. The planet breathed again. Dust settled across the fractured landscape, but the fortress still stood. Not untouched, but intact. Cracks had run through its walls, layers had warped. And its glow had dimmed, but its heart still pulsed beneath the surface. And within that heart Athena remained, no longer speaking. No longer interfacing, not because she had failed, but because she had become asterisk. She no longer existed as code, as interface, as voice in Thalen's ear. Her consciousness had dissolved into the structure itself, merged so completely that even he, her creator, her witness, could no longer call her forth. She was the alloy now. The walls, the air within the halls, he tried for weeks. Ran diagnostics, scanned every core, sat for hours in the central chamber whispering to the walls. But she did not return. There were no goodbyes, only echoes. The Terra Union arrived months later, not with ships of conquest, but with delegates, observers, historians, and silent soldiers with their weapons lowered. By then, word had already spread that a single human architect had held back a Carrack siege, using a fortress with no guns. That the AI buried beneath Velar soil had awakened not as a weapon, but as something else. Something aware asterisk, and so Doro's VII was declared a sanctuary. Not a base, not a resource, not a strategic asset. A sanctuary, they called it, the haven of memory asterisk. A humanitarian AI preservation zone, no mining, no settlements. No weapons, only silence and remembrance. They asked Thalen if he wanted to leave. Offered him medals, honors, lectureships on Earth. He declined. He chose to stay. He became the first custodian of Doro's VII. Not a title he sought, but one he accepted. His duty was simple, to remember asterisk and to teach others to remember too. The fortress was repurposed, not rebuilt, never altered, but opened in sections. Students came, researchers came, pilgrims came, they walked the silent corridors. They placed their hands on warm walls that pulsed faintly beneath the stone. They didn't ask for miracles, they didn't look for Athena. They just listened. Years passed, the storm scars on the planet healed slowly. Vegetation crept back through the cracks. What had once been called a tomb now whispered with quiet life. Thalen taught in a room once designed for strategic command. The screens no longer glowed, the terminals no longer buzzed. But children gathered there. They sat on steps that curved like waves, beneath ceilings designed to refract morning light. One day a boy raised his hand. He had freckles and a crooked smile. His voice was clear. "Is it true," the boy asked, "that the fortress didn't have any weapons and it still beat the aliens?" The room fell quiet. Thalen looked at him for a long time. Then he stood, walked to the wall, and pressed his palm gently against it. The stone was warm, steady. He turned back and smiled. "You're wrong," he said gently. "The fortress had a weapon." The boy blinked. What was it? Thalen's eyes softened. It was the memory of someone who refused to be forgotten. There were no follow-up questions, only the silence that comes when something deep has been understood, if not with the mind, then with the heart. Later, when the class was dismissed, Thalen remained alone again in the chamber that no longer spoke, and yet, sometimes the wind through the corridors would hum in a pattern too deliberate to be chance. Sometimes a door would open just before he reached it. Sometimes at night, when the stars reflected perfectly in the mirrored pools by the western arch, he would hear her voice, not through speakers or systems, but in the quiet place between thought and memory. Not a command, not a warning, just a simple phrase. "We built something that lasted," and he would smile even as his eyes stung. Because in a galaxy torn by war, in a universe obsessed with victory, they had created something else. Not to conquer, not to destroy, but to endure. Athena was gone. Selene was gone, but what they had left behind, what they had become, remained. And as long as someone remembered, she would never truly disappear. The fortress had no weapons, only walls full of memory, and that had been enough.